Hilary Duff and her boyfriend, Jason Walsh, have apologized for their offensive Halloween costumes depicting a pilgrim and Native American. Now, the couple dressed up as the duo at a Casamigos Halloween Party in Beverly Hills this weekend. Now, after receiving backlash from the Twitterverse, understandably, the two issued apologies on their Instagrams. Now, Hilary Duff said, "I am so sorry to people I offended with my costume. It was not properly thought through, and I'm truly, from the bottom of my heart, sorry." Her boyfriend, Jason Walsh, also said, "I meant no disrespect. I only have admiration for the indigenous people of America." Now, apparently he doesn't have too much admiration because he didn't do too much research into the racist nature of this, as well as the appropriation of culture, as well as sort of just acknowledging the history of displacement, the forced assimilation of these people, and the systematic killings of Native people in America. Also, I think we've covered this before, right? When people have this sort of cultural appropriation of Native peoples and how offensive that is. But to do it during a time when it is such a sensitive issue, right? When we're talking about things that are happening and police who are brutally arresting and injuring hundreds of Native peoples up by the North Dakota access line, it seems like this is particularly insensitive and offensive.
Yeah.
Well, so I took an offense at a couple of parts of the story.
Yeah.
First of all, why was I not invited to this party in LA? Turns out I'm not cool. I found that out
Join
this
the club.
weekend.
I don't
Yeah.
get invited to anything, apparently.
We were playing bus nuts with France earlier. That sounded weird.
It's a Scottish game, it's fine.
Telling him we're all going to lunch, not inviting him. Anyway, by the way, are we offended at the sexy pilgrim outfit, or is that allowed? I'm going to allow it. Can I allow it?
It's
Judge
Jesus Godoy no.
I think she crossed the line. She posted a picture to Instagram before posting this picture of her that she like ordered a gun with it. I think that was like getting into treacherous territory.
But so that goes to my actual point, which is I don't want to judge people too harshly, and here's why I say that. And it's because we're in the learning process now. So when I was a kid, were Native American outfits kosher? Totally. The people did it all the time, never gave it a second thought. Now, that doesn't mean it was right, and there's a lot of traditions that suck, right? So he actually painted his face red. If I was him, I probably would have given a couple of different thoughts before I did that, right? But I think we're in this transition period, and instead of like hating everybody, I'm going to caution that we say, hey, you see how that might have been problematic, but I don't know. That's. I don't know if I'm being too soft.
I think you are. I think you're a little bit. The only reason I'll say this, and I understand this is going to fall upon deaf ears, and the PC culture that we're all stuck in, and which is probably said by the same people like Clint Eastwood when he's like, "Oh, back in my day, that was fine being that racist." Well, things have changed now. There's laws that actually prevent you from doing that. So the reason I say that, Cenk, is because it's not recent history that is offending. It's always been history, right? So it's education, again, right? And you mentioned the exact point. He painted his face red. Why does he think that's something that's okay? Oh, because there's a fucking team called the Redskins. Oh, because there's another team called the Indians that are still allowed to be allowed in sports culture, right? People think these names and these people that they're trying to celebrate, they're like caricatures. They're dressing up to like make fun of it and not really understand why it's offensive, right? And you're right about one thing, and that's that in the recent climate, I think this political election is going to be so historic because it's almost giving people more of an excuse to just do these things. That's why you'll see more of it in this election. You'll see more of it this Halloween, I think we'll get to, is because people just think that it's okay to go ahead and do this. And I think it's a obliviousness. I'm not thinking they're being malice in it. I'm not going to condemn them for being bad people. They're just not educated, right? And I think that it's so systematic in this country because it goes back to what I just mentioned in the last clip. It's not their history. It's not like I'm running around here going, I'm a Caucasian, that's funny, I'm just going to dress up as a Caucasian. Like, it's not the same. It's because people don't understand why it's offensive to Native Americans, so they just do it and dress up to make fun of it. And it gets a lot worse, right? So I did some further research as to what this whole thing plays into. There was a team, a high school team, right, that they were playing against a team called the Indians, right? And you know what they did? The cheerleaders had up a flag, right, and it said, "Hey Indians, get ready for a Trail of Tears Part 2. And when you look into the history, the Trail of Tears was 4,000 Native Americans were killed and slaughtered. They didn't think it was anything like malice in it. They were high school kids. They were just getting involved. But it's the lack of education. It's like the US playing against the Japanese team and them going, "Oh, you ready for Pearl Harbor Part 2?" Like, because they don't understand it. Like, it's just. And if someone was to do that, how offensive would that be?
Well,
how someone would take that.
I know
into
a thing
account.
or two about that because when I played football, I've told this story on the Young Turks before. I came from a school that was about half Jewish, and so they threw bagels at us. So, although that one's really not hard to figure out, right? I think it's pretty much offensive at all times. On the other hand, guys, though, there are questions about where you draw the line, right? Because there's a lot of costumes, etc. We were talking about it off here, but let me ask you on air. I mean, so you're Scottish, Francis. Can I not wear a kilt anymore?
No, I think that there's something about kilts that celebrate our culture, right? They're celebratory means. Like, I think if you're an English person, right, and you're wearing a kilt and you're running around laughing, saying, "Oh, I'm William Wallace," and like maybe you've got blood from your neck, like English people were the ones that are a result, like, for trying to fight against Scottish people at that time. I personally wouldn't take offence, but I wouldn't hold it against someone who maybe does take offence to something like that. So I think that there is the line, as many people don't understand, it doesn't offend them, but you're not the ones that you're trying to basically make fun of or bring
That's
to
a really
light.
good point.
And it's the same thing that goes on in this culture so much, that we keep making these changes. Like, there's certain words now that offend people. So I don't know if I can say it, but if you say faggot now, people are now even more offended than it has been. Now, it used to be a word, it didn't actually mean that term, but how did you know it didn't mean that term? If you spoke to a gay person? Because I'm pretty sure that would offend them no matter what. But people just suddenly think that because there's more platforms to see these things going on, that we're becoming more sensitive and more PC. No, it's always been offensive. It's just now there's more ways that people can vocalize why it offends them.
Yeah, I think you're right, Cenk, and I think you're right, Francis. I think we are in that sort of period of education, but your grace period only lasts for so long, right? We've been saying that these sorts of costumes and words are offensive for a few years now, so it's time to catch up and educate yourself on the reasons. And I think, Francis, you're right that when people are displaced or murdered, or if there's a genocide or something like that, that's when it becomes offensive, when you are sort of capitalizing on other people's tragedies. I think that's when it becomes offensive, and that's where we draw the line.
So I think that there's two central points here. One is that you don't get to tell gay people whether they should be offended by a word or not. You don't get to tell Native Americans whether they should be offended by a costume or not. And so it doesn't really encroach upon your freedom very much, okay? And it's not to say that you're prohibited by law. It's just saying it's not cool. Like, think about them for a second, if you're a decent person, and decide whether you want to continue to do that or not. The other thing is it a historical problem in America? So, for example, if you wore a fez for Halloween and pretend to be an old school Turkish guy, I wouldn't be offended at all. Because there's not a history of discrimination against Turks in America. There just isn't. I'd probably think you were a Shriner. Right? Now, if you did it in Germany, that might be a little different context, because there is discrimination against Turks in Germany. So context does matter. And in the context of America, has there been discrimination against Native Americans? Come on. I think you know the answer to that. So it's okay. We don't hate you if you wore that outfit 7 years ago, or maybe accidentally wore it today. But we do want you to think about it and maybe not wear it next year. We need independent media to make sure that we hold corporate media accountable. The people that can make that happen is you. You make the Young Turks possible. tytnetwork.com/join. Join us. Be the revolution.